The autumn rain fell steadily outside Detroit's Hope Community Church as Monica Williams finished her evening shift at the social services office. At 35, she had dedicated her life to helping others, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited her that evening. Monica's routine included stopping by the church every Wednesday to help with their food donation program. The old brick building had been her sanctuary since childhood, and even now, its familiar wooden doors brought her comfort after long days of handling difficult cases at work. As she pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, the clock on her dashboard showed 7:45 p.m. The streetlights cast long shadows across the wet pavement, and the sound of rain hitting her umbrella created a peaceful rhythm as she walked toward the side entrance. But peace quickly turned to confusion when she heard soft whimpers coming from behind the recycling bins. At first, Monica thought it might be a stray cat. The church often attracted them during bad weather, but as she moved closer, the sound became clearer. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw a small child, no more than 2 years old, huddled in the corner, clutching a worn teddy bear. "Oh my God," she whispered, immediately rushing to the toddler. The little boy was soaking wet, his blonde hair plastered to his forehead, and his blue eyes wide with fear. He wore clean clothes, a blue sweater and jeans, but had no coat despite the cold October weather. Monica quickly removed her own jacket and wrapped it around the shivering child. "It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now," she said softly, trying to keep her voice calm despite her racing heart. The boy didn't cry or resist when she picked him up. He simply clung to her neck, his small body trembling. Inside the church, Pastor Johnson was closing up for the evening when Monica burst through the door. "Call the police," she said urgently. "I found him outside, behind the bins." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Police officers arrived, followed by Child Protective Services. Monica's own colleagues. The boy wouldn't speak or let go of Monica, screaming whenever anyone tried to take him from her arms. A medical check revealed he was healthy but scared and cold. "No identification, no note," Officer Martinez said, shaking his head. Security cameras show a woman leaving him there around 5 p.m., but the footage is too blurry for facial recognition. As a social worker, Monica had seen many abandoned children, but something about this little boy touched her heart deeply. Perhaps it was the way he held on to her, or how his eyes seemed to carry a wisdom beyond his years. When her supervisor, Mrs. Thompson, arrived at the church, Monica made a decision that would change her life forever. "I'll take him," she said firmly. "I'm certified as a foster parent, and my home study is current. He clearly feels safe with me." Mrs. Thompson looked skeptical. "Monica, are you sure? You know how people can be. A single black woman taking in a white child." Monica straightened her shoulders. "Those people don't matter. What matters is this child needs a safe place tonight, and he trusts me." After 2 hours of paperwork and emergency placement procedures, Monica carried the exhausted toddler into her modest 2-bedroom home. The boy had finally fallen asleep, his small hand still gripping her shirt. She gently placed him in her guest room bed, surrounding him with pillows to prevent falls. As she watched him sleep, Monica thought about the challenges ahead. She lived on a social worker's salary in a middle-class neighborhood. Her mother had passed away last year, and her father lived in Florida. She was single, worked long hours, and hadn't planned on having children yet. But looking at this vulnerable little boy, none of those things seemed to matter. "We'll figure this out together," she whispered, gently touching his soft hair. "I promise you're safe now." Before leaving the room, Monica noticed something written in faded ink on the tag of his teddy bear. "Samuel." She smiled slightly. At least now she knew his name. What she didn't know was that this rainy Wednesday evening would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about family, love, and destiny. As she prepared for bed that night, Monica heard Samuel stir and whimper. Without hesitation, she returned to his room, sat in the old rocking chair beside the bed, and began humming softly. In that quiet moment, as the rain continued to fall outside, an unbreakable bond began to form between a kind-hearted social worker and an abandoned little boy, a bond that would eventually shake the foundations of 2 very different worlds. 3 years passed quickly in the small but cheerful house on Maple Street. Monica and Samuel had fallen into a comfortable routine that made it hard to remember life before they found each other. The temporary placement had turned permanent when no one came forward to claim Samuel, and Monica officially adopted him on his 5th birthday. Life wasn't always easy for their unique family. Monica had to learn many new things, like how to care for Samuel's fine blonde hair that was so different from her own. She spent hours watching YouTube videos about hair care and skin protection, determined to meet all of his needs perfectly. The local pharmacy staff got used to seeing her study sunscreen labels carefully, making sure she got the right protection for his fair skin. Their mornings started early. Monica would wake up at 5:30 a.m. to prepare Samuel's lunch, pack his backpack, and get ready for work. She had taken a second job doing weekend paperwork for a law firm to afford the nice daycare center near her office. It meant less free time, but seeing Samuel thrive made every extra hour worth it. "Mommy, why do I look different from you?" Samuel asked one morning while eating his breakfast cereal. Monica had been expecting this question, but it still made her heart skip a beat. She sat down next to him at their small kitchen table, pushing aside the bills she'd been reviewing. "Because God makes everyone special and unique," she explained, using simple words he could understand. "Families don't have to match on the outside. What matters is the love we have in our hearts." Samuel seemed to accept this answer, nodding thoughtfully before asking for more orange juice. But not everyone was as accepting as Samuel. At the grocery store, an elderly woman once asked Monica if she was Samuel's nanny. At the park, other parents sometimes stared or whispered. Monica handled each situation with grace, teaching Samuel through her actions how to face ignorance with dignity. Their favorite part of each day was their evening ritual. After dinner, they would sit in the living room where Monica would help Samuel with his alphabet practice. He was smart and curious, always wanting to learn more. Then they would read a story together in the big armchair that Monica's mother had left her. Samuel would curl up in her lap, his blonde head resting against her chest as she read about adventures in faraway places. Again, he would beg when the story ended, and Monica usually gave in, even though she knew she should be doing laundry or preparing for the next day. Their small community gradually warmed to them. Mrs. Chen from next door started bringing over homemade dumplings, claiming she always made too many. Samuel's daycare teacher, Miss Sarah, offered to watch him for free when Monica had to work late. Even Mr. Thompson, the grumpy mailman, began saving special stamps for Samuel's growing collection. One Saturday morning, while they were planting flowers in their tiny front garden, Monica overheard Samuel proudly telling the neighbor's kid, "That's my mom. She's the best mom in the whole world." Her eyes filled with tears as she pressed her hands into the warm earth, thanking God for bringing this child into her life. The adoption finally became official after months of home studies, paperwork, and court visits. Monica spent more than she should have on a special celebration dinner at the local pizza place, Samuel's favorite. They invited everyone who had supported them, the church members who helped with childcare, Monica's colleagues who had become like family, and their neighbors who had become dear friends. "To my son," Monica said that evening, raising her glass of soda while Samuel giggled at the formal gesture. The small crowd in the pizza parlor cheered, and Samuel beamed with pride, his blue eyes sparkling with joy. That night, as Monica tucked Samuel into bed in his room decorated with solar system stickers and toy cars, he asked sleepily, "Are you happy you're my mommy?" Monica felt her heart swell with love. "Being your mommy is the best thing that ever happened to me," she answered honestly, kissing his forehead. As she watched him drift off to sleep, Monica thought about their journey so far. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew they would face them together. Their little family might not look like others, but it was perfect in its own way. With love, determination, and faith, they had built something beautiful, a home where differences didn't matter and love knew no boundaries. Little did Monica know that their greatest challenge was still to come, one that would test the bonds they had so carefully built over these precious years together. As Samuel entered Riverside Middle School at age 12, things began to change. The innocent questions of elementary school turned into more challenging situations. His blonde hair had darkened slightly to a honey color, and his blue eyes stood out even more against his fair skin. The contrast between him and Monica became more noticeable as he grew taller, almost reaching her shoulder now. One Tuesday afternoon, Monica received a call from the school principal that made her heart sink. She found Samuel sitting outside the principal's office, his new white sneakers scuffed and his t-shirt dirty. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. "He got into a fight," Principal Martinez explained when Monica entered his office. Another student made some inappropriate comments about your family. It turned out that a new kid had asked Samuel if he was ashamed to have a black mother. Samuel's response had been a punch to the boy's nose. While Monica understood her son's anger, she knew they needed to talk about better ways to handle such situations. That evening, they sat on their old porch swing, sharing the chocolate chip cookies Mrs. Chen had brought over. The early autumn air was cool, and Monica wrapped a blanket around both of them, just like she used to do when Samuel was smaller. "You want to tell me what really happened today?" Monica asked gently, watching a group of birds settle into the maple tree in their front yard. Samuel picked at a loose thread on the blanket. "Jake said I couldn't be your real son because we don't match. He said you probably just felt sorry for me." His voice cracked slightly at the end. Monica took a deep breath, fighting back her own tears. "Samuel, look at me," she said softly. When he raised his eyes to hers, she continued, "Family isn't about matching colors or looking alike. It's about love, respect, and choosing each other every single day. I didn't feel sorry for you. I fell in love with you the moment I found you, and that love grows stronger every day." Samuel leaned against her shoulder, something he did less often now that he was trying to act more grown up. "But Mom, sometimes I wonder about my birth parents. Does that make me a bad son?" "No, baby, it doesn't," Monica assured him. "It's natural to be curious about where you came from. That doesn't change what we have." She paused, then added with a smile, "Though I hope you know that throwing punches isn't the answer." Samuel managed a small laugh. "Yeah, I know. But you should see the other guy. Samuel James Williams." Monica tried to sound stern but couldn't help chuckling. Then she grew serious again. "How about we make a deal? Next time someone says something ignorant, you use your words instead of your fists. Show them you're better than that." Over the next few months, Samuel faced more challenges. There were the awkward parent-teacher conferences where some teachers automatically turned to talk to other adults before realizing Monica was Samuel's mother. There were birthday party invitations where other parents did double takes when Monica dropped him off. Each time, Monica showed Samuel how to handle things with dignity and grace. She also made sure to surround him with positive influences. Their church had several mixed-race families, and Monica arranged playdates with their kids. She found books about adopted children and diverse families for their evening reading sessions, though Samuel now often read them on his own. One day, while helping Monica plant their annual vegetable garden, Samuel asked, "Mom, do you ever wish I looked more like you?" Monica set down her gardening trowel and looked at her son, this beautiful boy who had her laugh, her love for reading, and her stubborn determination, even if they shared no physical traits. "No, baby," she answered truthfully. "I love you exactly as you are." That evening, as Monica watched Samuel doing his homework at the kitchen table, she noticed how he stuck his tongue out slightly when concentrating, a habit he'd picked up from her. It made her smile, thinking about all the ways they were alike that had nothing to do with appearance. They were building their own kind of normal, day by day. It wasn't always easy, but they were learning and growing together. Monica couldn't help but feel proud of the young man Samuel was becoming, confident, kind, and strong enough to stand up for what he believed in, even if his methods sometimes needed adjustment. What neither of them knew was that their biggest test of identity and belonging was just around the corner, waiting to shake the foundations of their carefully built world. On Samuel's 16th birthday, Monica planned a small celebration at their home. The morning started like any other special day in the Williams household, with Monica making Samuel's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream smiley faces, just like she'd done since he was little. But when Monica went to get the mail that afternoon, her hands trembled as she held an official-looking envelope from Harrison, Brown and Associates law firm. It was addressed to Guardian of Samuel James Williams and marked urgent and confidential. She slipped it into her apron pocket, not wanting to spoil Samuel's birthday with whatever news it might contain. Their small house filled with guests by evening. Mrs. Chen brought her famous dumplings. Samuel's basketball teammates crowded around the TV playing video games, and Pastor Johnson came with his wife bearing a homemade cake. Samuel had grown into a handsome young man, now towering over Monica at 6 feet tall. His honey blonde hair and blue eyes still drew attention, but he had learned to carry himself with confidence despite the occasional stares. "Mom, this is the best birthday ever," Samuel said, hugging Monica after his friends left. She held him tight, remembering the tiny boy she'd found 14 years ago. The letter in her pocket felt heavy, like a weight pressing against her heart. Later that night, after cleaning up the party mess, Monica sat at their kitchen table, finally opening the envelope. Her hands shook as she read the contents, and tears began falling onto the crisp paper. "Mom?" Samuel's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway wearing his favorite basketball shorts and an old t-shirt, concern written across his face. "What's wrong?" Monica quickly wiped her eyes. "Baby, come sit down. There's something we need to talk about." Samuel sat across from her, his expression serious. He'd grown so mature, Monica thought, remembering the giggling toddler who used to sit in that same chair, feet dangling far above the floor. "This letter came today," Monica began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's from a law firm. They say they've been looking for you, Samuel. They say they represent your biological father." The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Samuel stared at the letter on the table as if it might bite him. "My biological father?" he finally whispered. "But why now? After all these years?" Monica reached across the table and took his hand. "The letter says he's been searching for you since you disappeared. They want us to meet with them next week. But honey, this is your choice. We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." Samuel pulled his hand away and stood up, pacing the small kitchen like he did when working out a difficult math problem. "Do they say who he is?" he asked. Monica shook her head. "They want to discuss everything in person. They're offering to come to us, or we can go to their office in Detroit." Running his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd picked up from Monica, Samuel turned to look at the family photos covering their refrigerator. There were pictures from every stage of their life together: his first day of school, basketball games, camping trips, and silly selfies they took on lazy Sunday afternoons. "What if?" Samuel's voice cracked. "What if he wants to take me away from you?" Monica felt her heart break at the fear in his voice. She stood up and wrapped her arms around her son, who might have grown taller than her but still needed his mother's comfort. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "No one can take you away. You're 16, and you're my legally adopted son. Nothing in that letter can change that. We'll face this together, just like we faced everything else." Samuel hugged her back tightly. "Promise?" "I promise, baby. Always." They stood there in their small kitchen, holding each other while the crickets chirped outside and the old refrigerator hummed its familiar tune. Monica's mind raced with questions and fears, but she kept them hidden, staying strong for her son. Before going to bed, they decided to meet the lawyers at their office next week. As Monica lay awake that night, she prayed for strength. Something told her their lives were about to change dramatically, and she needed all the courage she could gather to face whatever was coming. Neither Monica nor Samuel could have imagined just how much that simple letter was about to transform their world. The law firm's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming glass building in downtown Detroit. Monica felt out of place in her best navy blue dress as she and Samuel rode the elevator up. Samuel wore the suit they bought for his school debates, his hands nervously adjusting the tie every few seconds. "Remember," Monica whispered as they approached the receptionist's desk, "we can leave any time you want." The receptionist led them to a large conference room with views of the city skyline. 3 people were waiting: 2 lawyers in expensive suits and a tall man with graying temples who stood as they entered. Monica felt Samuel stiffen beside her when he saw the man. They shared the same blue eyes and straight nose. "Hello, Samuel," the man said softly, his voice shaking. "I'm Theodore Hamilton. I'm your father." The name hit Monica like a thunderbolt. Everyone knew Theodore Hamilton II, the tech billionaire whose face appeared regularly on business magazines. His company, Hamilton Technologies, was worth billions. Samuel gripped Monica's hand tighter as they sat down. One of the lawyers, Mrs. Harrison, began explaining the situation. 16 years ago, she said, Samuel was taken from his nursery by his biological mother, Catherine Pierce. She was suffering from severe postpartum depression and had stopped taking her medication. Mrs. Harrison paused, sliding a photo across the table of a beautiful blonde woman. Catherine left several confused notes about wanting to protect Samuel from the pressures of wealth. She disappeared with him, and despite hiring the best private investigators, Mr. Hamilton couldn't find them. Theodore Hamilton hadn't taken his eyes off Samuel. We discovered that Catherine had left you at the church, he continued. But by the time we traced that lead, you had already been adopted. It took years of legal work to finally locate you. Monica felt dizzy. She remembered reading about the Hamilton baby's disappearance years ago, but she'd never connected it to her Samuel. Looking at Theodore Hamilton now, she could see all the features Samuel had inherited, the shape of his jaw, the way he held himself, even the slight tilt of his head when thinking. "What happened to my biological mother?" Samuel asked, his voice barely a whisper. Theodore's face softened with sadness. "Catherine was found 2 years after she left you. She had—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She had taken her own life. I'm so sorry, Samuel." Tears rolled down Samuel's cheeks. Monica wrapped her arm around him, and he leaned into her comfort, just as he had done since he was small. Theodore watched this interaction with mixed emotions crossing his face. "Ms. Williams," he said, turning to Monica, "I can never thank you enough for taking care of my son, for loving him and giving him a good life." "Samuel is my son too," Monica said firmly, though her voice was kind. "I've loved him since the moment I found him." The second lawyer cleared his throat and began discussing legal matters. Theodore Hamilton wanted to set up a trust fund for Samuel worth millions. He wanted to be part of Samuel's life, to help with his education, to make up for lost time. "But I don't want to disrupt the life you built," Theodore added quickly, seeing the fear on Monica's face. "I just want a chance to know my son." Samuel, who had been quiet for most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "How do I know you're really my father? Do we need to do tests or something?" Theodore smiled sadly and pulled out his phone, showing them a baby picture of himself. It could have been Samuel at that age. The resemblance was striking. "We can do any tests you want," Theodore said. "I want you to be comfortable with everything. There's no rush." As the meeting continued, Monica's mind raced. Her simple life with Samuel would never be the same. They were now connected to one of the wealthiest men in America. Looking at Samuel's face, she could see him struggling to process everything: his birth mother's tragic end, his father's identity, the wealth that was suddenly his birthright. When they finally left the office 2 hours later, both Monica and Samuel were emotionally exhausted. They stood on the sidewalk, watching Theodore Hamilton climb into a sleek black car with tinted windows. "Mom?" Samuel said, watching the car disappear into traffic. "Can we get ice cream, like we used to when I was little?" Monica smiled through her tears, grateful that some things hadn't changed. "Of course, baby. Ice cream fixes everything." But as they walked to their favorite ice cream shop, both knew that their lives had shifted permanently. The question was, would this change bring them closer together or tear them apart? 2 months after the meeting at the law firm, Monica sat in her small living room watching Samuel try on his new custom-made suit. Theodore Hamilton had sent his personal tailor to their house, insisting Samuel needed proper clothing for the upcoming charity gala where he would be officially introduced as a Hamilton. "How do I look, Mom?" Samuel asked, adjusting the perfectly fitted jacket that probably cost more than Monica's monthly salary. He looked handsome, grown up, and somehow different in the expensive clothes. "Like a prince," Monica answered honestly, swallowing the lump in her throat. These days, Samuel's life seemed to be split in two. During the week, he was still her boy who did his homework at the kitchen table and helped Mrs. Chen carry her groceries. But weekends now belonged to Theodore Hamilton's world. Every Saturday, a black SUV would arrive at their house, whisking Samuel away to expensive restaurants, private golf clubs, or Hamilton Technologies headquarters. Theodore was making up for lost time, showering Samuel with everything money could buy: the latest phone, designer clothes, even a brand new laptop for his schoolwork. Monica remembered last weekend when Theodore had invited her to join them for dinner at Detroit's most exclusive restaurant. She'd felt out of place among the crystal glasses and silver spoons, watching Samuel easily chat with his father about investment portfolios and future business plans. "Ms. Williams," Theodore had said while Samuel was in the restroom, "I hope you know I'm not trying to replace you. You've given Samuel something I never could, a normal childhood filled with love." Now, watching Samuel admire his reflection in the mirror, Monica wondered if that normal childhood was slipping away. His friends from the basketball team rarely came over anymore, probably intimidated by the luxury cars that frequently parked outside their modest house. "Samuel," Monica said carefully, "How are you feeling about all these changes?" Samuel flopped onto the couch beside her, careful not to wrinkle his new suit. "It's weird, Mom. Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a movie. Dad, I mean, Theodore. He wants to send me to this fancy prep school in California for my senior year. Says it'll help me get into Harvard or Yale." Monica's heart skipped a beat. "California? But that's—" "I haven't said yes," Samuel quickly added, taking her hand. "I told him I needed to think about it. Mom, sometimes I feel guilty." "Guilty? Why, baby?" "Because part of me wants all these things Theodore offers, the opportunities, the connections, learning about the business. But then I feel like I'm betraying you, like I'm choosing his world over ours." Monica pulled him close, just like she used to when he was little and had nightmares. "Samuel James Williams, listen to me. You're not betraying anyone by wanting to know your father or exploring opportunities. Your world is big enough for both of us." That evening, Theodore came to their house for the first time. He looked uncomfortable sitting in their small kitchen, his expensive suit out of place among the worn but loved furniture. But he made an effort, complimenting Monica's cooking and genuinely laughing at Samuel's jokes. "I have a proposal," Theodore said after dinner. "Instead of Samuel going to California, what if we looked at private schools here in Detroit? That way, he could stay home with you, Monica, but still get the education opportunities I want for him." Monica watched Samuel's face light up at the suggestion. It was a compromise, a bridge between their two worlds. Later that night, after Theodore left and Samuel went to bed, Monica sat on her porch swing, the same swing where she'd comforted Samuel through scraped knees, school troubles, and his first broken heart. Mrs. Chen came over with her evening tea, settling beside Monica. "Big changes," the older woman said wisely. "But good changes, I think. That boy has enough love in his heart for two families." Monica nodded, wiping away tears. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Samuel needed both his worlds to become the person he was meant to be. Her job now was to help him find his balance between Theodore Hamilton's wealth and the simple, loving home she had given him. As she looked up at the stars, Monica remembered something her mother used to say: "Love doesn't divide, it multiplies." Maybe that was the answer, not choosing between worlds, but bringing them together in a way that would make Samuel's life richer in every sense of the word. The spring of Samuel's junior year brought more changes than just the blooming flowers in Monica's garden. Theodore Hamilton's influence grew stronger each day, and with it came increasing pressure about Samuel's future. The crisis began one sunny Saturday morning when Theodore arrived at their house carrying a thick folder of brochures. "I've made appointments for us to tour 3 private schools next week," Theodore announced, spreading glossy pamphlets across Monica's kitchen table. "The best ones in Detroit. Samuel needs to decide soon to secure his place for senior year." Samuel sat between his two parents, looking overwhelmed. Monica noticed how he kept glancing at the acceptance letter from his current public school's honors program, pinned proudly on their refrigerator door. He had worked hard to become class president there, led the basketball team to state finals, and finally found his place after years of feeling different. "What about Roosevelt High?" Samuel asked quietly. "I'm already in all AP classes there, and Coach Stevens says I might get a basketball scholarship." Theodore frowned slightly. "Son, you don't need scholarships anymore. With your new trust fund, you could buy the entire school. You're a Hamilton now. You need an education that reflects that." Monica watched Samuel's face fall at these words. "I'm a Williams too," he said, his voice stronger than before. "Mom and I built a life here before we knew about the trust fund." The tension in the kitchen grew thick. Mrs. Chen, who had come over with her usual weekend dumplings, quietly excused herself. But before leaving, she squeezed Samuel's shoulder and whispered something that made him smile slightly. That evening, Samuel locked himself in his room, something he hadn't done since his early teen years. Monica could hear him pacing, a habit he'd picked up from her. When she knocked with his favorite hot chocolate, he finally opened the door. His room was a perfect picture of his divided life. Basketball trophies next to expensive gadgets from Theodore, photos of his public school friends beside new pictures with Theodore at business events, his old worn backpack hanging next to designer suits. "I don't know who I am anymore, Mom," Samuel confessed, sitting on his bed. "When I'm with Dad at his office, learning about the company. I feel excited about that future. But then I come home, help Mrs. Chen with her groceries, joke around with my basketball team, and that feels right too. He looked up at Monica with tears in his eyes. Who am I supposed to be? Monica sat beside him, remembering the tiny boy she'd found at the church. Baby, you don't have to be just one thing. Being Theodore Hamilton's son doesn't erase being Monica Williams' son. You can be both. But Dad wants me to be like him, to run the company someday. He's already talking about Harvard Business School and board meetings. Samuel stood up, moving to his window. Yesterday, he showed me my office at Hamilton Technologies. My office, Mom. I'm 16. Monica joined him at the window, looking out at their familiar street where Samuel had learned to ride his bike, where he'd played basketball with neighborhood kids, where he'd grown up loved and secure. What do you want, Samuel? She asked simply. Not what Theodore wants, not what I want. What does your heart tell you? Samuel was quiet for a long time, watching the sunset paint their neighborhood in soft colors. I want to make both of you proud, he finally said, but I don't want to lose myself in the process. Later that night, Monica found Samuel typing on his new laptop at the kitchen table. I'm writing both Dad and Principal Evans' emails, he explained. I'm telling Dad I'll visit the private schools, but only if I can also stay on the basketball team at Roosevelt. And I'm asking Principal Evans about taking some extra business classes at the community college while finishing my senior year at Roosevelt. Monica felt pride swell in her heart. Her son was finding his own path, creating a bridge between his two worlds instead of choosing between them. And Mom? Samuel added, looking up from his laptop. Could you maybe teach Dad how to make your famous chocolate chip cookies? He mentioned the other day that he hasn't had homemade cookies since his mom died. Monica smiled, understanding what Samuel was really asking. Help me bring my two families together. Of course, baby. We'll invite him over next weekend. As she watched Samuel return to his emails, Monica realized that this crisis of identity might actually be a blessing in disguise. Through it, Samuel was learning the most important lesson of all, that life's greatest joy often comes not from choosing between different paths, but from finding ways to bring them together. 1 year had passed since the mysterious letter changed their lives forever. It was Samuel's high school graduation day, and Monica stood in their backyard, amazed at how different everything looked. Their usually modest space had been transformed with white tents, elegant flowers, and catering stations, a graduation celebration that brought both of Samuel's worlds together perfectly. Samuel had succeeded in creating his own unique path during his senior year. He graduated as valedictorian from Roosevelt High while taking business classes at the community college. He kept his position as basketball team captain, leading them to the state championships, while also interning at Hamilton Technologies during school breaks. The party was Monica's idea, but Theodore had insisted on helping. Now, their small backyard was filled with an unusual mix of guests. Samuel's basketball teammates in rented suits mingled with corporate executives. Mrs. Chen served her famous dumplings alongside fancy catered appetizers, and Pastor Johnson chatted with Theodore's business partners. Mom, Samuel called out, rushing toward Monica in his graduation robe. Dad's looking for you. He says it's time. Monica followed Samuel to the makeshift stage Theodore had set up. Her heart swelled with pride seeing her son in his valedictorian sash and honor cords. Theodore stood at the microphone, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in casual clothes. Something Samuel had convinced him to wear instead of his usual business suit. Everyone, Theodore began, his voice carrying across the yard. I'd like to make an announcement. The crowd quieted down. Today isn't just about celebrating Samuel's graduation. It's about celebrating family, all kinds of family. He gestured for Monica to join him on stage. When I first learned that my son had been raised by a single black woman in a modest Detroit neighborhood, I had expectations. But Monica Williams taught me the most valuable lesson of my life, that love knows no boundaries. Theodore pulled out an envelope. That's why today, I'm announcing the establishment of the Monica Williams Scholarship Foundation with an initial endowment of $10 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Monica felt her knees go weak. Samuel grabbed her hand, grinning. This foundation, Theodore continued, will help single parents who choose to adopt, regardless of their race or economic status. Because Monica showed me that wealth isn't just about money, it's about the richness of love, dedication, and sacrifice. Monica couldn't hold back her tears as Theodore explained how the foundation would help other families like theirs. But the biggest surprise was still to come. And one more thing, Theodore added, smiling at Samuel. The foundation will be run by its first official employee, Samuel Williams Hamilton. Samuel stepped forward, his eyes shining. Mom always taught me that when you're blessed, you should bless others, he said into the microphone. That's why I've decided to defer Harvard Business School for a year to help get this foundation started. Because before I learn to run a technology empire, I want to help create more families like ours. The backyard erupted in applause. Mrs. Chen wiped tears from her eyes while Samuel's basketball teammates whooped and cheered. Monica found herself wrapped in a group hug with both Samuel and Theodore. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Monica sat on her beloved porch swing between her son and his father. The three of them watched the sunset together, a comfortable silence between them. You know what I remember most about that night at the church? Monica said softly. Not the rain, not the fear, but this feeling that God had trusted me with something precious. I didn't know then that I wasn't just saving a child. I was helping build a bridge between two worlds. Samuel leaned his head on her shoulder, just like he used to do as a little boy. And you didn't just raise a son, Mom. You taught Dad and me what family really means. Theodore nodded, his eyes misty. I spent years building a technology empire, but Monica built something far more valuable, a home filled with love. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Monica looked at her unusual family and smiled. Their story had started with an abandoned child behind a church, grown through years of challenges and love, and blossomed into something beautiful and unexpected. Yes, their family didn't look like others. Yes, they had faced obstacles and prejudices, but they had proven that love truly knows no boundaries, not of race, not of wealth, not of biology. They had created their own definition of family, and in doing so, they would help others do the same. The end.